afternoon. You're listening to Clearing the Air on KFCF Fresno 88.1 FM. I'm your host, Dolores Weller of the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, also known as CVAQ. And this program, Clearing the Air, covers air pollution issues in the San Joaquin Valley and brings you interviews with individuals who are at the forefront of air quality policy, advocacy, and research. And our show airs every fourth Friday at 3 p.m. and is hosted by a CVAQ staff person. And basically, CVAQ is a partnership of more than 70 member organizations across the valley and state, and we are unified in our commitment to creating clean air in the valley for all residents. And so today what we're going to talk about is a component of air quality and a really big issue for environmental justice communities throughout the valley and state, and that's pesticides. And we're talking to Valerie Grosby, who is a community organizer for the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment in Delano. And she leads their pesticide work, and she also represents the Californians for Pesticide Reform. And she's going to be talking to us about how pesticides impact our health, including impacts to air quality here in the valley. So thank you, Valerie, for joining the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this.
So I know you've been very busy. There's a lot going on in recent policy work around pesticides, so glad you can join us. This is a timely conversation. But just to get started, give us an overview from your organization's perspective about how pesticides impact our health.
Pesticides have a range of health impacts to children, unborn children, as well as adults. We have seen that pesticides expose us to different kinds of cancer, fertility issues, pregnancy, miscarriages, child development. They are also disruptors to hormones and endocrines, as well as damage to the brain and nervous system.
Mm-hmm. And are there specific types or specific pesticides that your organizations have been focused on in recent years that have those health impacts?
Yes, chlorpicrine, metamsodium, methyl bromide, chlorpyrifos are just a few that Californians for Pesticide Reform and the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment have worked on in the past decade.
Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of us, when we think about pesticides, we think about buying organic food versus traditional fruits and vegetables that use pesticides, but we're talking about impacting our health. Your organization focuses a lot on the communities that live around the areas where pesticides are applied. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Can you repeat that last part again, Doris?
Just if you could talk about the focus of pesticide exposure being about living in proximity to where pesticides are applied versus actually targeting the consumer in order asking people to buy organic vegetables and fruits versus your focus is communities that are surrounded by agriculture and the health impacts that they receive through their proximity.
Yes, we, especially here in the San Joaquin Valley, many of our counties, so a lot of our work is done here in the San Joaquin Valley, and here in the San Joaquin Valley, we know that many of our counties have big areas of agriculture and are in rural areas, and many of our schools are surrounded by agricultural fields, as well as our home development and just the community in general. Many communities are surrounded by different types of agriculture: almond trees, citrus, grapes, pistachio trees, just a variety of different crops.
Right, and so, thank you for pointing that out. I wanted to make sure that people are aware that most of your work is geared towards the exposure that people experience through, their proximity and just living in the valley, really. I mean, with our wind patterns here, what is, and the topography and our weather patterns and air pollution that sort of traps all of the outcomes of the agriculture industry within this region. It really impacts all of us. So can you talk a little bit about how pesticides and air quality are linked?
My mom, Teresa Deanda, always said that you can't talk about pesticides and pesticide drift without talking about air quality. And you can't talk about air quality without talking about pesticides and pesticide drift. And we've seen year after year from the American Lung Association State of the Air report that our regions here in the San Joaquin Valley are the highest for ozone pollution and particulate matter pollution. And we can't ignore that the pesticides that are applied heavily on our agricultural crops are deeply connected to the particulate matter pollution and the ozone pollution.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I think I've mentioned here on the show in the past that CVAQ, our core work is to really work on the air quality plans that are being implemented and developed and implemented at the local air district. And within those plans, in order, the air district lays out how they're going to clean up a particular type of pollution, and for different standards that the EPA sets out for the district. And for example, in their last PM 2.5 plan, there is an emissions inventory within that. And so for PM 2.5, a lot of you are familiar with, the direct PM 2.5, like fireplaces, charbroiling, ag burning. That is a direct form of PM 2.5. But there are also precursors that contribute to PM 2.5, and that's where we've been having a lot of difficulties over many years with the air district in order to get them to address precursors. And precursors are basically like ingredients of PM 2.5 versus direct PM 2.5. And one of the largest precursors or ingredients of PM 2.5 that is indirect is ammonia, and that comes from like large contained animal facilities like dairies, but also from pesticides and fertilizers. And just their most recent plan, there was, within their emissions inventory, it said that there were 98 tons per day of ammonia, that 98 tons per day, that a winter average, 98 tons per day, that came from pesticides and fertilizers. And obviously that's concerning that is kind of going under the radar, and a lot of it has to do with weak regulations nationally, that there aren't standards set in place that our local air district needs to adhere to, and also that our air district is not going above and beyond and really addressing all of the precursors that contribute to PM 2.5. So I want to make sure everyone is aware that's why it's still really important to make that connection between pesticides and air quality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, when I've spoken during public comment at air district meetings, it's often been met with a sarcastic and level of hostility when we do try to connect air quality and the heavy use of pesticides and the exposure that it brings to human health and our kids and unborn children. And it's quite frustrating that we're ignoring this big elephant in the room of danger that we're exposing ourselves to
Right, and I have seen that at the air district meetings where they sort of feel like this is not within their jurisdiction or within their responsibility, and there's nothing that they can do, and this is the way of life here in the valley. In order to have food, we need to have pesticides, and there's just no looking into safer controls or any research needed. And that a lot has to do with how pesticides are regulated in the state and here in the valley. Could you talk to us about the agencies involved?
Right, and I've also got to mention my mom again. My mom frequently said that we aren't trying to put agriculture out of business. We, agriculture here in the San Joaquin Valley is, vital to the economy, but we've got to look at, we've got to make better regulations at the state level and the federal level, as well as county level.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, to find that balance and to do the research and look into things and not just kind of business as usual and move forward with what we've been doing for many years. So yeah, if you could talk to us about the agencies that are responsible for regulating pesticides in the state and the valley, and what your experience has been.
Yes, so there are different levels of regulation. There's the Environmental Protection Agency, there's the Department of Pesticide Regulation, and then there's county level, and each county in California has their own county ag commissioner. And just recently, the Department of Pesticide Regulation had different listening sessions that they called workshops around the state. And they had one in Lamont very recently on June 4th. But the Lamont location, which is in southern Kern County, was the only San Joaquin Valley location. And a lot of folks couldn't go to that workshop because it was so far. There were folks that traveled by bus from Madera and Merced counties because this issue is so important to them. But if the Department of Pesticide Regulation really wanted to hear from community members, they would have had more workshops in different parts of California that was more accessible for folks, especially the timing of the workshops wasn't ideal. So I think that if agencies like the Department of Pesticide Regulation really wants to hear from folks, they'd do it at a time where folks can go, as well as different locations where it's more accessible for people to go.
Definitely. And if listeners are just joining us, this is Dolores Weller from the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. You're listening to Clearing the Air on KFCF 88.1 FM. And we're talking to Valerie Garospi from the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment about pesticides in the valley, how it's linked to air quality and our health. And so you were talking about the workshops and how there was just one workshop for the valley, and I think that that's something I've seen across issues, that we're just kind of lumped into one region and we get one workshop, and neglecting the fact that we're so diverse and we are made up of 8 different counties, and it's an enormous area. So that definitely falls short of what we would expect, especially for a pesticide regulation workshop, where pesticides are such a huge issue here in the valley. What was discussed at the Lamont workshop? What was DPR looking to hear, and was it on a particular pesticide, or just an overall community conversation? What were community members sharing?
Well, the purpose of the workshops from the Department of Pesticide Regulation, the focus was schools. Mm-hmm. And pesticides that are applied near schools. So it's not the pesticides that are directly on school grounds, on campus. Mm-hmm. It was for fields around schools. And it was to get input on what communities... The purpose of the workshop was for communities to give input on pesticides that are applied near their schools.
So I know that there are certain regulations in place about how close you can spray pesticides near schools. Can you talk to us about those regulations?
Right. So in regards to schools, we know that highly hazardous pesticides are used within a quarter mile in almost half of all of the schools in 4 Central Valley counties: Tulare, Merced, Stanislaus, San Joaquin, and there's also Kern County. And we, one of the things that we need is bigger buffer zones. Some counties have a quarter mile where pesticides are not supposed to be applied within a quarter mile of schools while school's in session or school activities. But we know that quarter mile protection zone or buffer zone is not enough. And we know that to better protect our kids during school, we need bigger buffer zones. One thing that parents also asked at the DPR workshop was notification. Can we have notification that the grower next door or across the street is going to apply pesticides the next day? We're also looking at this other pesticide, Talone, this banking system. We're asking for the banking system to stop because Talone is applied near many of our schools here in the San Joaquin Valley and on the coast.
And talk to us about Talone and what kind of crops is it normally used for, and why is the banking system a problem?
So if we compare Talone, the banking system, to, not sure if you remember the AT&T rollover minutes. Mm-hmm. If you don't use your minutes 1 month, they can roll over to the next month. Well, this banking system of Talone is similar. So growers are allowed to use a certain amount of Talone every year. And if they don't use all of those pounds of Talone, those can transfer over to the next year. So they can use more than what is allowed because they've rolled over from the previous year or years.
Right. So that there is that lack of accountability there, and it sounds like the community is seeking a stronger system, bigger buffer zones, which makes sense around schools, and notifications make sense for all communities. High and low income, we see agriculture near residences and near schools across the valley, and so notifications seems to be like a no-brainer to me. So I'm not surprised, because we know that the pesticide and agriculture industry is has such power here in the valley, but definitely needed to protect our health. And I think some listeners would be interested in knowing, how is the valley different? I know that the valley is, the quote unquote breadbasket of the country and the world, but do we have more pesticide application than other counties that are also agriculturally driven, like Ventura County or the Watsonville, Monterey areas where there's also a lot of agricultural activity. How do we compare? Are we disproportionately impacted
We're absolutely disproportionately impacted. If you look at the California Department of Public Health report that came out in April of 2014 titled Agricultural Pesticide Use Near Public Schools in California, Fresno County is the very, very top county in highly hazardous pesticide use, and we're looking at numbers from 2010, and Fresno County is Fresno County was at 27.8%. Excuse me, Dolores, we need to back up on that part. Hang on, because that's not percent. So delete that.
That's okay.
Okay, hang on. So we're definitely disproportionately impacted. If you look at the California Department of Public Health report from April of 2014 titled Agricultural Pesticide Use Near Public Schools in California, if you look at the list of the counties that are deeply impacted by pesticide use, and we're looking at numbers from 2010, Fresno County is at 27.8 million pounds. And then you look at Sacramento, and they're at 3.3 million pounds.
Wow. So
that number is alarming. And so if we look at Fresno County again, we're at 38.9% of schools that are exposed within a quarter mile of highly hazardous pesticides, compared to, again, Sacramento County, which is at 8.0%.
Wow, that's really alarming. So you said almost 28 million pounds, and that's just for 2010. Those are 2010 numbers. Mm-hmm. 28 million pounds of pesticides applied just in Fresno County. Mm-hmm. And Fresno County is the top of the list. Whereas in Sacramento, we're seeing somewhere like 3 million. And almost 40% of our schools are near these hazardous pesticide application sites.
Right.
That's definitely alarming, and I mean, I'm happy to see that report is out, that the state, conducted an assessment like that. I'm sure that your organizations had something to do with it, but it definitely needs to be put to use and implementing some stronger regulations with that data. Thank you for sharing that. So what can people do? Are there any, current actions? Are there anything that, our listeners can do if they want to get involved and they want to make some changes with pesticide use?
Absolutely. I know that the Department of Pesticide Regulation is still taking comments, and we can still submit our comments if we've got some concerns regarding pesticides in our schools. We can talk to our county ag commissioners. We're very busy with this work, and we'd appreciate the support, and we'd love to go to your community and talk to you about specific pesticides that are applied near your community. Just contact us, and we can make that happen. Okay, so
go ahead and give everybody your website so that people can get in contact with you if they want to get involved.
So our website, and that's where you can also find my email address, is www.crpe-ej.org.
Great, and I will try to throw the report that Valerie mentioned and maybe some of the DPR contact information for the comment period on our Facebook page, facebook.com/SJV Clean Air, so that folks can learn more and have the opportunity to comment. Well, thank you, Valerie, for joining the show, informing us. It's been very informational, and I hope that people really, really take the next step and get involved. You've been listening to Clearing the Air on KFCF Fresno 88.1 FM. This is Dolores, and we'll hear from you next month.
Oh, I might be down in Fresno town. Well, I might be in Sacramento. Yeah, I might be in Fresno town. Well, one thing I want you to remember, I'll be on Highway 99. If you remember one thing, baby, honey, you know what? It's just fine.
325 at KFCF in Fresno. Currently 104 degrees, expecting a high of around 107 today. This is listener-supported, non-commercial KFCF. Up next is Counterspin, but before that we have a couple of minutes here, so Counterspin coming up in about 5 minutes.